If you are doing a lot of this, it's a surprise when you come across this. The G7 summit at Carbis Bay made Cornwall a lively place for all country sports in the last week.
We are stalking in an area where there potentially might be a bit of friction, not because of antis, well, they might be antis, but there are 6,500 police officers encamped on one of the fields. Well, not encamped, but it's their food hall. Yeah, they'll probably be the best part of 2,000 coppers sat there having their supper when we're stalking around. And they all have much bigger rifles, so yeah, exciting. But no, it shouldn't be an issue because obviously we're not allowed to be there. And I'm hoping there's not going to be a deer that close to them, because if there is, then that really would be exciting, because we're going to be not only stalking beside them, but discharging a rifle beside them.
Fear not, gentle viewer, the boys in blue may have had us in their thermal sights, but they didn't confront us. And it is thermal sights that we're concentrating on this evening, because Ollie has a new thermal spotter, the Pulsar Helion 2 XP50 Pro, which he reckons could give him considerable advantage when it comes to finding roebucks. He has seen Dartmoor deerstalker Tom Davies glue his eyes to his thermal spotter from the start of the stalk to the end, and he reckons Tom is getting it right.
Yeah, I've got one up there, which is incredible, because I don't think I'll be able to see that through binoculars because of the mist.
The first day of the G7 summit, you may recall, was characterised by a Cornish sea fog, and that's making optics particularly challenging, but not thermal. Ollie spots this animal across a small valley, away from the police field.
It is worth its weight in gold for spotting, but I don't think once you spot it, I think its use is sort of expended. Other people, I mean, obviously then if you wound it, you can blood trace it and things, but I think the key for me is just spotting, because then from then on it's a hunt, and then you know where it was last seen. You can go and then stalk into it using your senses and the rifle and your bushcraft. But if you use it more than that, Tom Davies, then I think it sort of kills part of the bushcraft. Joking aside, obviously, Tom's great, but yeah, no, it's my personal opinion on it.
Is it almost a bit of a cheat in a way?
No, I wouldn't want to possibly call Mr. Davies a cheat, God no. But I think it just, like, for me, like when I go stalking and hunting, I like to really rely on my bushcraft and my stalking skills. So once I've spotted the animal, I think for me the thermal goes away, and we go from there.
We will be outfoxing with Tom later in this piece, so he can defend himself then. Ollie makes his way towards where he saw that buck. However, stuff is starting to go wrong. He leaves his sticks in the Land Rover and decides not to go back for them. Using the thermal, he spots 2 pheasants where the buck was. Then this happens. The pheasants grow 4 legs each and run off.
Tom Davies would not have mistaken those pheasants for deer like I did. I will happily accept that as gospel truth. They were deer and I thought they were something else, so Tom would not have made that mistake. But then again, you know, his hand is now completely turned into a thermal, so when you literally sleep with it, I suppose it's anyway. He's got a wife now, so I'm sure she's not too happy about him bringing a thermal into the bedroom. But I don't know how that works. But I think he's told me he's gone to bed with it tonight. He wakes up in the middle of the evening having a nightmare just at the ceiling.
Ollie is going out again in a couple of evenings' time. In the meantime, I joined Tom on Dartmoor for fox shooting and more lessons in thermal spotting. Tom has both the Pulsar Accolade 2 thermal binos, and earlier this week he got his hands on the Pulsar Thermion 2 riflescope.
I've had about 2 weeks. It's only been on the rifle this week. I've been out of it twice. I've shot 6 foxes with it. It's absolutely incredible. The quality, the outline of the animals you're shooting at is great.
Well, let's just qualify that. Thermal takes some getting used to, even though the Thermion is better than most. Let's do a quick quiz where you have to see if you can name that animal, filmed through the Thermion. Question 1, and the answer is fox. Question 2, and the answer is cat. Question 3, we're back to fox again. Question 4, filmed on the Accolade, and the answer is badger. Here it is using ordinary night vision. Question 5, one for Ollie, filmed through his Helion. The answer is pheasant. Oh no, gold medal roebuck? No, a Labrador with a pheasant in the background. Back to the fox shooting, and Tom starts his evening on a hillside with a view of about 1,000 acres of Devon.
The thing now, you think, oh, it's going to start getting dark in a minute, and then the light just continues for ages and ages like this. It's great. I love this time of year. It didn't get dark till gone 10 last night. It's lovely.
There's a red hind browsing in front of us. A roe doe comes out to feed. Then the Accolade picks up a fox about 1 kilometre away, mousing along a line of gorse and marking its territory.
And I'm spotting it probably, I guess I'd say that's 1,000 metres, 1,000 yards roughly, something like that. Go around the bank, and I haven't zoomed in on that. That's just gone from pure movement. That's one thing with the thermals. If you use one as much as I do, you get used to. Like one of the main identification things is actually the movement of that, how that animal's moving before anything else.
Is that a criticism of Ollie?
He'll get there. I'm happy to give some lessons free of charge. But
That fox is not heading towards us, but this other fox is. Once it goes into cover, Tom has trouble picking it up. He thinks he can see it with the thermal.
I'm not sure. I left my binos in the truck, so I've got something on the thermal in the cover. We have just seen a fox come down the valley here, and it's kind of where it was heading. So I'm wondering whether it's it. We'll just hope wind's good, so we'll hope it comes out into the open, and I'll be able to see then.
While we're on binos, and as that sea fog mingled with darkness to make light gathering difficult, I give Ollie a cheap pair of iSki Hyperion ED 10x42 binos, priced at under £250 to try out alongside his Zeiss Terra ED 10x42s, which he bought for more than £400.
Christ, I don't want to say this.
No, go on.
I don't want to lose any chance I have of getting sponsored by Zeiss. Because these are not actually that bad. These are quite good. For a fraction of the price, I should imagine. To be honest with you, I know they've been out and about all evening with me, and it might be partially, but these are clearer. But I think that's partly due to the fact that these have been out in pea soup all evening.
There is a thing in thermal spotting circles now where people are saying, sure, expensive optics are lovely, but you may not need super duper binoculars when thermal is doing all the legwork of spotting the animal. Still, it helps if you have binos at all. Tom walks slowly to a point where he reckons he can intercept his fox. It is the animal he saw. It crosses a field and then stops and chews at a lamb's leg that it finds.
I was unsure what way it was facing, that's why I didn't take the shot for so long. I couldn't tell. Was it facing towards us? It was. I thought it was.
So where did you put the bullet?
Like here.
Yeah.
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 It guessed little vixen. Yeah. Little Baron vixen.
With light dimming, it's time for me to switch to night vision. Tom is still using his thermal combo. Now, some of you may have spotted the obvious error in Tom's setup, so he explains it.
So I've got an IR on top of a thermal scope, and the reason being it's because we're hoping to get some good footage tonight. We're hoping to zero the IR to the PIA, which is point of impact of the thermal scope, so when I'm shooting I can record through this, but I can also switch this on and Charlie can record. That's the plan anyway.
The foxes come out after 11 PM, and that's when Tom starts to get busy.
We come in, actually the wind was wrong, so we looped all the way around, and we come in top side of them, and I was looking down on her, this vixen. See, she's had cubs, and that's why it's shot on the back there. So I was aiming down on it. But yeah, she's had cubs. You know, they're well off from suckling now. She's really dried up and even got fur coming back now, so those cubs are a good size, so we'll try and find them as well, hopefully, somewhere. And yeah, took one on the right here. Sat nice after a little squeak, sat and looked at us, and I took the shot. I mean, the noise does help that, especially, you know, like we drove up a fair bit across the ground there, and doing that, you know, they're used to that noise all the time, so that does really help. I was on rainbow colouring, and colours are bright. I couldn't see the top left corner to show if it was recording or not, so I couldn't tell. So I was kind of like trying to move the rifle to get better lighting to be able to see the top left corner, but it was really bright yellow and I just couldn't see the symbols. We literally come in the field to pick up the first fox I shot, and the second fox I'm running across the field, and it stopped and sat there. So by the time I ran back to the truck and got the rifle, it still sat there, and I think about 230 metres it sat, so yeah, I managed to get a shot.
We end the evening on 6 foxes. The farmers will be pleased. Now it's time to fast forward to Cornwall the following evening, and this time, no mistakes. Ollie is a man with a mission. Just to help him, I give him this for species identification.
So that's a pheasant. Yeah, that's a pheasant. Yeah. The rest of this is a deer, but that's what I saw.
Yeah, that bit's a pheasant, is it? Right, good. So I thought you could use that probably.
Actually, that's very kind of you. I'm going to take it and throw it straight in the bin.
We go straight back to the pheasant field. It's out for the Pulsar. Ollie is beginning to depend on it, and this is what he sees. We wait until the doe clears the area.
I wasn't quite sure. I had to wait a little bit till he cleared a little gap in the fence that I could shoot through. We're not very far away at all. We're only about 60, 70, maybe 80 at the tops. So I looked down with the naked eye, saw nothing, then got the thermal out, had a glass, and there are 2 heat exchangers there. And when they're in the dense grass like that, they don't look like big signatures. The only reason I will have a look at these this time, and sure enough, then I saw the red rump. And buying these thermals, they're obviously very expensive, but you do have to learn to use them. You can't just expect to be Mr. Davies first time out. Who is?
Are you praising?
I am. I will happily give him praise. He is, even though he's like his third arm, he is very good with it. He's a professional.
We head to the downed deer, and Ollie has another challenge for the thermal.
See who can find it first. A 6-month-old Labrador. I sort of know where it is, so I don't really want to cheat, but I'm going to actually look for it through this thermal. If I find it before she does, so we'll give it a go. Get back! Get back! There she is. Get back! Hey Lars! Get back! Have you got it? Good girl, she's got it.
He's a good dog. He's a good dog. He's a good dog.
There, you should always get a lab test. Ollie gives his assessment of the animal he has shot.
His dad, I can almost guarantee it by the way it's purling as well. His dad lives up there in that wood there, so we're whilst I'm sure he's proud of his sons, he wouldn't take too kindly to them trying to shag all his girlfriends.
On the way home, Ollie spots a doe up against a far hedge. This is what she looks like in his thermal.
It's worth sort of waiting around when there's a single doe, because there often is a buck in tow, because they're quite close to rutting. Not immediately close, but this is when they're starting to sort of get an idea of who they fancy and things. But we waited for no buck, and then I thought I saw a little bit of movement on the thermal around her ankles. But we all know my thermal skills aren't very good, so she kept on looking behind her and looking around, hence we thought there was a buck with her, but it may well have been a kid. So we stalked up, had a little closer look, but couldn't see any visible signs of either. So perhaps she's just very, very heavily pregnant, in which case she wouldn't really be giving off any smells for the bucks at this point. It's only when they drop their kids do they start to go back on heat.
In some ways, thermal creates more problems than it solves. Stalking is not the simple process it used to be.
You just need to trick yourself into seeing things that aren't necessarily there, or are there in my case a lot of the time. But yeah, you're right, you see far more, so far more information sort of comes into your stalking than previously where, oh, there's one, concentrate on that and not then scan around and see 6 others in the field. Or I wouldn't even say focuses the mind, because it actually does the opposite. I think it actually gives you too much to worry about sometimes, and but there are certainly worse problems to have, I think. So yeah.
A successful stalk, a successful night's foxing. We weren't arrested, and we learnt a lot about how to use thermal to help you develop your fieldcraft. You can find both Ollie's company, Cornish Sporting Agency, and Tom's company, Dartmoor Deer Services, on Instagram and on Facebook. And for Pulsar's range of products in the UK, visit thomasjacks.co.uk.
Don't knock over the camera, you silly dog.